Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts Podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. With your hosts, Drew and Daniela. Take our hands and let's walk this journey together. Welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful Hearts Podcast with Daniela and Drew. And today we are going to talk about struggling and why it's actually a good thing. Daniela, why is it?
I wasn't sure if we were going to add more.
Why is it a good thing? Tell me.
Oh, that's why we're here to talk about why struggle is a good thing. I think from me, when one of the answers that comes to mind is because struggle is essentially ultimately how you grow as a person. If, of course, you can actually learn from the struggle, because I think it's possible to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. I've definitely done that, so I don't know how much is, I guess, how much you're growing if you're continuing to do the same things. But in essence, in the grand scheme of things, when we struggle, there usually is always in some way, shape, or form some silver lining, some opportunity, something good that comes from it. And at least that's the first thing that pops to mind.
Yeah, I would say that looking back on life and looking back at a lot of things, even recent things in my mind or in my life, I guess there are times where you really want to quit or you really want to give up on something. And it's like you might be on the doorstep of a breakthrough at that point. And I think the beauty in the breakthrough is understanding the struggle, appreciating the struggle, but be holding on long enough to push through the struggle to get to the other side. And then you look back like, wow, that was all worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad that I hung in there.
Yeah.
But you don't, it's like at your finest hour of wanting to quit, your hardest hour of wanting to quit is when you have to hold on the longest to push through. And it like life teaches you so much in those moments. I think that that's what I found so far in life with certain things, that it's not supposed to be fun. Like I think most people think that it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be fully engaged the whole time and enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, if you're not, if you're not fully engaged, or you're not just pushing along, then something's wrong. You got to find something you're more passionate about or you're more engaged with, that you will, I guess, overcome the little bumps along the way. But I think anything worth doing, you got to get to the point where you don't want to do it and you're pretty much sick of it. I think that's something I never, that was like a muscle I never exercised at a young age, ever. I think I always had an out in some sort of way because I didn't have strong leadership in my life that showed me. I mean, my mom to an extent with certain things, but my dad never. And I guess learning to be a man, or learning to be, to mold yourself, right? A father figure, you try to, especially as a man, learning from a man that's around you, you learn their ways of doing things. And my father was not very good at sticking to stuff. He would move around to do other things, especially when he met resistance, because it was like, it's meant to be, or you got to be lucky enough to just get the result that you want. It wasn't hard enough work or pushing through when it felt impossible.
It sounds like what you're the main theme around how you perceive struggle is really when it comes to, I guess, deciding what to do with your life, I guess, in a professional way, or like when you try something new, the idea that it's not realistic to just expect to it for like, I guess, like the opportunity to be easy. Is that, I think that's what I'm
Yeah,
gathering
to an extent, it's
to
like,
some extent. And then, sorry to cut you
yeah,
off, but not sorry.
okay,
You also, I guess what I was also hearing was how uh, struggle for you wasn't, I guess, properly modeled to handle. Like your dad didn't handle struggle in a constructive way. Your mom in some ways, but not your dad. I think those are like the main things that I
yeah.
was hearing.
There was a lot of moving parts in there. I guess it's a mixture of the habits you develop around struggling or meeting a challenge, the healthy mindset going into something.
Yeah.
I think that I know for me, when you feel something is impossible, almost I would say, for instance, if you're not somebody who is in shape or is out of shape or has never really exerted their bodies to a certain point of exhaustion, it feels almost impossible. Like, oh man, I can't, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this continuously for the foreseeable future and get a result. There's no way. I can't even make it past the first day. I'm dead. And it's like, you just show up the next day anyways. And it's not as bad, or it's still pretty bad. But like after a while, when you get in the groove of it, you look back at where you were and how bad it was, but you stuck through it even still. And then you're like, wow, I got over that hump, and now there's new challenges, but I understand how to meet those challenges, understand that resistance I'm feeling, or that almost that feeling of, I guess, not being able to achieve what I want, or I feel like it's impossible, but you hold on just long enough to push through. And I was never taught that.
Right.
When things were impossible, it was just hanging up.
Impossible.
It's impossible. And anybody that's succeeding or anybody that's doing those things, they're lucky. They're not, they're born with it. It's like stupid shit, like stupid, ignorant mindsets. So I had to meet challenges and internalize them myself, but kind of not share them with my family, especially my father, because having somebody with a dismissive mindset would help me make my mind up for me, as opposed to saying, yo, there is a way around this. Like,
Right.
hey, stick in there. You're going to figure it out. You just got to push a little harder. It is going to be difficult, but if you stay in there long enough, you're going to push through. And nobody ever told me that.
Well, it's I guess so. What I'm hearing is the idea of, or I guess I wonder if from what you're sharing about struggle, how I tie what you're saying is, it sounds like I'm going on a little bit of a rant, but I'm like trying to piece it all together right now, so I apologize. This idea that struggle would be handled differently if you're taught the tools to go into with a good mindset. But at the same time, it is through the struggle that we do learn those things as well.
Yeah, it's creating an expectation, a good expectation for meeting a challenge. It will suck. It will hurt. It will be painful. But I will assure you that that's when you have to hang in. That's when you have to have the most belief that it's going to be better. It's going to be awesome. Because it's like it's exercising a muscle. You're not going to be able, if you push hard enough in that last rep, even though it feels impossible, the next time around, you're going to be that much stronger, that much stronger, that much stronger. And you're going to be pushing past those boundaries and those barriers. And that's your body, your mind, your body also tells you this is too difficult. Your mind says this is too difficult. Do something that is easier. Our bodies are made, our minds are made to help us, keep us safe and comfortable, to keep us moving along. So when something is not easy or not something we can move forward, we'll look for an easier way. We'll look for a way out. We're always looking for an out as human beings. And you have to be disciplined enough to stay in there. Because if you push your mind in that direction through resistance, it'll be those things that those things that you were struggling with at one point will eventually become easier. I mean, as a child, you were met with all types of crazy challenges that you don't even recall having. Pushing to get yourself to stand up, having weak legs, or, developing the muscles you needed to walk or crawl or climb. You were consistently every day working at that, like without like a mindset of giving up, right? You didn't even have the capacity to understand what that was. But that's the same thing with anything else. It's like you are going to be met with these resistances. You are going to be met with these challenges in your life. And if you can go at it with that same mindset of keep practicing, keep pushing, you'll finally get the breakthrough. I just think that we forget that we've been doing it our whole lives in a lot of ways. And we can be trained to do this, but when we're more sound in the mind and we're more developed, we have the ability to pick and choose.
Ew, that was good.
That comes with maturity too, right? Like little kids will fall, get out, and like they don't realize that they'll make that same mistake until they don't anymore. But as an adult, it's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go run in traffic. But a child doesn't know that. A child just will run across the street. A child doesn't know the dangers, is not aware. So it's like a gift and a curse. But if you could take that same mindset as a child and then do something that's really impossible and be very ambitious, but keep running at it, you will make it through.
We're not encouraging for you to jump out in front of a car.
No, not at all. But
just in case.
But if you were, I guess, what would be the word to? Well, I'm trying to think. If you were to hypothetically do something,
the idea behind it.
The idea behind jumping in front of a car, but not with your life, but doing it with your career and making a jump or a leap of faith where other people will be like, you're crazy. That's going to set you back so much financially. You're just going it's a bad idea. If you could persevere, if you could push through and just say, you know what, I'm still going to put the blinders on and I'm going to push forward and eventually I'll make it. I don't care what anybody says, you will. That's the type of,
it sounds like I think about how to, I guess, like tie it into the episode as a whole. Is what I'm hearing is that you're sharing how to deal or manage the struggle, especially the struggles that we have when we go and we go and go and we do, and maybe we're just not quite there yet, and we want to give up. We want to just throw in the towel and say, okay, when is enough? But what you're describing is really continuing to push through and see the end of it. Like I think of there's a picture that comes to mind. It's like two scenarios side by side. In one scenario, there is a person like digging through, I guess, like underground. And when he gives, because it's been so long, I guess, like he gives up and you see him walking away. And then in the next scenario, it's a different person doing the same thing, but they've kept going and they've reached the diamond that, they needed to. And I think the caption is like, you really never know, what's waiting if you give up. And I think that's what I was hearing when I was listening to you, is really dealing with, I guess, coming to terms that you're going to struggle, but how you go about it is really important, which I love for the episode, truthfully, because I was going to add more, but I will let you go.
No, that's great. It's really just having a game plan to succeed. It's a game plan to succeed, and knowing going into it that it's going to require all of you to do extraordinary things. There was a plaque I was reading in my manager's office, and it's like a lot of people don't want to. People say it's too expensive, like it costs too much to succeed or to have high levels of success, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But those same people, don't realize how expensive it is when
to not.
the bill comes in for regret, right?
Yeah.
You're paying one or the
Yeah.
other bill. You're either paying, you're paying all this to do this, or you're going there is, I guess, a duality to it, right?
Yeah.
We're paying something. Just
Yeah.
know that the efforts going forward, you're going to feel some sort of pain in any direction you go in. But I think that people like that slow pain that they're comfortable with versus the unknown, where if they push in the other direction. And
yeah. There's this other quote that says it's better to bear the change of discomfort than the pain of staying the same.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also very applicable to what we're talking about. And I think that's all of these things are exactly why we need struggle, because it is our struggles that teach us these things. The importance of perseverance, the importance of, okay, acknowledging this is not going well. What do I need to do different? Or even acknowledging, man, you know what? Right now, I'm not necessarily not continuing to mine, but I am going to take a moment to take a breath and then resume again and not just walk away from it. So I think it actually played out very nicely in that sense of, how to tackle struggle, but also exactly why it's important. Because struggle is, and I think struggle is in some ways what brings people together. Because when I'm vulnerable with people and I share my struggles, it helps encourage them to be vulnerable as well. It's happened with clients, it's happened with people. And I think that that's also part of why it's important to struggle. I know that's repetitive, but it is very true. I just thought of that right now about moments where I've bonded with people by just sharing with them things that I've been through, and then they've done the same. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Being vulnerable about things that we've experienced does bring people together. So it is a sense of connection and struggle too.
There is.
Now, there is that extreme of misery loves company.
Oh yeah.
and living in constant struggle and developing victim mentality and just feeling sorry for yourself. And there are certainly people who will join you in that, but I don't mean that. I mean in the sense of let's encourage and be there for each other through our struggles. That was another ramble there, but it's fine.
No, definitely. I think that you can learn a lot from sharing your war stories or your battle scars, right?
For sure.
And talking about how you overcame the things in your life. I think everybody loves inspiring stories of coming from here and then making it here. People want to hear those stories. They're uplifting. It actually gives people a reason to believe that what they're going through is not as bad and they can push through. It's like, oh wow, you went through that. What I have isn't as bad. I could definitely make it. I can definitely push forward, and it inspires and uplifts people. So I think it also helps you find a common ground. Hey, you're also human too. We're both human beings. Makes people real.
Yeah. I think to your point, I think there is a possibility though that when people hear, because I know it's happened to me, when I hear somebody who's like, there are certain stories that I'm like, wow, mine is not that bad. If they did it, I can do it too. Sometimes I'm partially like I'm inspired, and then other times I'm also partially a little discouraged. And I think that that's very normal as well, as the idea of like, oh, but with that being said, that thought, they probably also had that thought. So if they can overcome those things, then so can we in that sense as well. Just in case anybody out there listening has gotten discouraged by hearing and comparing themselves to other people's stories, because as human beings, we tend to do that, and that's okay. But just like we're comparing ourselves, they probably also compared themselves at some point, and they were also able to push through. So I think it really does come down to how bad do you really want it? How bad do you really want to overcome whatever struggle and get to the other side? And again, it does teach you a lot about yourself. Some of my hardest moments in my life have really become the things that I'm more grateful for. Because if it wasn't for those things, I wouldn't be who I am. Andrew and I may have never met.
Yes.
If I didn't go through every single thing. And I think to kind of start to tie it all together in that sense is it gives you a sense, struggle gives you a sense of who you ultimately can become. I love who I'm becoming, and I might have still loved who I'm becoming if I had gone through different struggles or no struggles. But I really have learned to embrace them and say, oh, you know what? Like, that's great that happened. Could it have gone differently? Would I have wished that? Would I wish that upon anybody? Maybe not. But it doesn't change that I can now use the things that I've been through and to empower myself. And I think that that's really good, actually.
I agree.
Duh. How could you not? That was good. And then, just kidding. Not kidding. Kind of.
Yeah. And to anybody has tried to make a change in their lives or has gone through seminars or has read books and has gone on that path and then just hits a brick wall and just goes right back to where they were. You're not alone. That's normal.
Yeah,
it could
absolutely.
take a breakthrough could happen at any point. You could you could faceplant a million times, and then it's that one time you don't hit the snooze and you get out of bed and you make it all the way out and you're finally on the other side of it and you're like, wow,
yeah,
this is what I've been waiting for. This is that moment. I now I know what it feels like, and that's it. And from there, it's going to change everything because you're going to apply that thought and mentality towards everything else. And that's okay. Everybody has their breakthroughs at different times in their lives. We're not all on the same path doing the same things. Extraordinary things happen to people at different times in their lives when they find it, and that's okay. We're all human beings.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's actually a good way to stop chatting away in our listeners' ears and see what else comes up in the future. I think I encourage, or I would hope that there's some value that you get out of this. And maybe even think about having this conversation about struggle with people in your life. Because people's perspectives are interesting.
Indeed they are.
Do you want to close it off, or do I want to close it off?
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope that wherever you are, you're making your life better.